The locker room air hung heavy, still laced with the ghosts of hot showers and teenage exertion. Faint chlorine drifted from the drains, mingling with the warmer, animal scent of rubber-soled shoes left to cool beside benches. Most of the track team had already filed out 20 minutes ago. Only the low hum of the water cooler and the occasional metallic pop of contracting locker doors remained. Allie stood motionless in the center aisle. She had just finished her cool-down 10 kilometers, nothing close to her personal best, but enough to leave her breathing elevated and her skin covered in a fine, even gloss of sweat. Silver hair clung damply to the nape of her neck. The white PE shirt stuck slightly where perspiration had soaked through along her ribs and the small valley between her breasts. The red armband on her left bicep, still perfectly aligned, marked her status more clearly than any shouted order ever could. Her navy pleated skirt swayed almost imperceptibly as she shifted her weight. Below the hem, sheer white thigh-high stockings gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The nylon was still warm, almost hot, especially at the soles and around the balls of her feet, where sweat had pooled inside her running flats. She had already peeled those shoes off. They sat abandoned near a bench, insoles dark with dampness. On the linoleum directly beneath her lay the boy designated as her endurance trainee. Face up, arms at his sides, palms open in the prescribed display of surrender. His uniform shirt was drenched across the chest. The loosened tie lay crooked against his collarbone like a surrendered flag. His breathing was audible, shallow, controlled, but unmistakably labored. Allie lifted her left leg first. She placed the ball of her foot precisely on the front of his throat, just below the Adam's apple. Not heavy pressure, not yet. Just enough weight that he felt the arch settle against his windpipe, molding to the contours of his larynx. The nylon was slick and fever-hot against his skin. Every inhale lifted her slightly. Every exhale lowered her again in a slow, living rhythm. "Breathe around my soul," she said quietly, voice still carrying the faint rasp of post-run fatigue. "Feel how it fits you." She flexed her toes once. The stocking whispered. Heat poured downward, and with the heat came the smell. Dense, intimate, unmistakable. After 40 minutes of steady running, the clean laundry scent of the nylon was long gone. What remained was layered and raw. Salt from fresh sweat, the warm musk of skin that had been sealed inside shoes, a sharp vinegar tang of lactic acid, and, deepest of all, a sweetish, almost yeasty note from between her toes. The fragrance settled over his face like steam, inescapable, coating the back of his throat with every forced inhale. She raised her right leg next. The motion was unhurried, almost elegant. She pointed her toes downward and brought them to his lips. He opened immediately, well-trained reflex. She slid inside slowly, big toe first, then second, then the rest until nearly half her foot rested in the warm, wet cave of his mouth. His cheeks hollowed as suction automatically formed around her instep. "Deeper today," she instructed. "Throat endurance set, no teeth, tongue flat, nose breathing only, slow and even." She shifted more weight onto the foot at his throat, not crushing, controlled. His pulse beat frantically against the center of her soul. She could feel each frantic thud through the thin nylon like Morse code. Inside his mouth, her right foot tasted exactly as it smelled, only magnified. Salt bloomed instantly across his tongue. Between her toes, the flavor sharpened into something tangy and sour-sweet, the characteristic post-run funk that made his eyes water involuntarily. The nylon added its own dimension, slightly abrasive weave against his soft palate, slick where sweat had saturated the fabric. Every tiny movement of his tongue dragged more of that humid essence across his taste buds. Saliva pooled quickly. A thin thread already escaped the corner of his mouth and trailed down his cheek toward the floor. Ali watched his expression with cool interest. His pupils were dilated, eyes glassy but focused. She tilted her head, letting damp silver strands fall across one cheek. 5 more minutes at this depth, she said. Then we add weight. Blink twice to confirm. 2 deliberate blinks. She gave the smallest nod of approval. Time stretched. The locker room clock ticked above the water cooler. Every so often, Ali rotated her ankle in a slow circle, letting different parts of her left sole, ball, arch, heel, press against his throat in turn. Each shift dragged fresh sweat across his skin. The nylon grew wetter, warmer, more pliable. His swallows rippled against her arch like tiny waves. Inside his mouth, her other foot had begun to feel almost liquid from his saliva. She pushed incrementally deeper, watching his throat flutter and convulse uselessly around her instep. The wet, choking sounds he produced were soft, restrained. She liked that restraint. It made everything that came later more meaningful. After what was probably 8 additional minutes, she spoke again. Good. Now full transfer. She began increasing pressure on his throat, gradual, merciless. His eyes widened. Veins stood out at his temples. Fingers twitched once along the floor, then froze in place. Obedient. She lifted her right foot just enough to let him drag in one frantic, gurgling inhale around her toes, then slid back in deeper still. His gag reflex spasmed against the ball of her foot. She felt it like a flutter against her soul. Shh, she murmured. You were built for this. The air grew thicker with their combined scents. Her feet, his saliva, the faint background locker room musk. Her left foot, the one steadily choking him, had become so saturated that it slid microscopically with each swallow. Every desperate breath he managed pulled more of her post-run essence directly into his lungs. Salt, heat, that distinctive vinegary tang, the deeper yeasty sweetness. It coated everything. She was just about to praise his endurance when it happened. His right hand moved. Not a grab, not a strike, just fingers closing around her calf, the calf of the leg that stood on his throat, trembling, not pulling her off, not pushing, simply holding, as though the weight, the suffocation, the overwhelming taste flooding his mouth had finally cracked something fundamental. Ali went still. For 3 long seconds, only his ragged, wet wheezing filled the space between them. Then she looked down. Really looked. His eyes were wide open now. Not blissed out, not floating. Clear. Terrified. Begging. Her expression changed. The soft curve of her mouth flattened. Eyes narrowed to silver slits. She withdrew the foot from his mouth with a deliberate wet sound. Saliva stretched, snapped, dripped onto his chin. She placed that foot beside his head, quiet, final. The foot on his throat remained exactly where it was. She tilted her head, studying him the way one studies a mechanism that has unexpectedly failed. You touched me, she said, very softly, almost sweetly. His fingers spasmed, released instantly, but it was far too late. Ali's lips curved again. This smile held no warmth. She lifted the choking foot just enough to let him suck in one single, panicked breath. Then she spoke 4 words that turned his blood to ice. Punishment protocol activated.